This week we're examining when clues in a text warrant deeper digging. We're going to look at Luke chapter 9, verses 49 and 15. Let's read those in the ESV. John answered, "Master, we saw someone casting out demons in your name, and we tried to stop him because he does not follow with us." But Jesus said to him, "Do not stop him, for the one who is not against you is for you." There's lots and lots of great stuff in there. Let's dig in at the first two words from the ESV's translation. John answered. Here in Koine, apokrithes de Ioannes apen. So the ESV takes these four words and turns them into two. John answered. But look carefully, and what we'll see is there's a verb, apen, he said, and there's also a participle, apokrithes, answering. So the aorist deponent participle is modifying the main verb, apen, which is aorist active indicative third person singular, he said. What we're seeing is what's called an adverbial participle of attendant circumstance. In other words, the participle is not a separate action from the main verb. It's not even complementary action to the main verb. It's functioning like an adverb and telling us something about the nature of the action of the main verb. So the ESV just says, John answered. But what Luke wrote was, but answering, John said, ... Master, we saw a guy. And that's significant, obviously. But what we need to look at carefully here today is the clue that Luke has given his readers and hearers. What are we told? We're told that John, in speaking to Jesus, was answering. Now, there's something that you all know inherently. You probably haven't thought about it very much in your life, but you cannot begin a conversation with an answer. Let me rephrase that. A conversation can't start with an answer. You may start your part of the conversation with an answer, but the conversation itself cannot start with an answer because by nature, an answer is responding to something. So what is John responding to here? We need to know to establish the context. In my Greek Bible, the UBS 4, these two verses are broken out in a little paragraph all by themselves, Luke 9, 49 and 50. And in a lot of English Bibles, this little passage is broken out in its own paragraph as though it were its own event. And that's interesting because Luke starts off his telling of this account with the word apokrithes, the participle apokrithes. Answering, John said. So you can't just start answering. What is he answering to? Well, what preceded this? What we see immediately before this little paragraph is the disciples of Jesus arguing about who among them is the greatest. So here they are, they're handpicked by Jesus, but like George Orwell said, all animals are created equal, but some are more equal than others. And the disciples are trying to figure out who's the most equal among them. And Jesus says, he pulls a child in, and he says, anyone who receives a little child like this in my name, pay close attention to that, in my name, receives me. And he who receives me receives the one who sent me. And if you're looking to be great, you have to understand that the least among you will be the greatest. You can't be hung up on greatness. That's not what this is about. But he said, anyone who receives a little child like this in my name. Let's go back to our passage from today. John answering said, Master, we saw a guy casting out demons in your name, and we tried to stop him because he doesn't follow with us. Right? So you see the connection to the part that came before? If we didn't have apokrithes in there, if we didn't have answering given to us by Luke, we might not realize that we need to look at what came before and connect the two. We might think that this is a standalone story, but it's not, because you can't start a conversation answering. All right, let's carry on. John said to him, Master, we saw someone casting out demons in your name. let's jump down and take a look at master. Epistata. So the word that Luke writes down to tell us what John said is epistata. Epistata from this is the vocative case, the calling case of epistates, which is a tutor, one who stands at or stands to, a teacher who stands at the front and teaches a group. This is classic Greek style stuff. There's in Greek mythology, Olympus was the epistates of Zeus, was the tutor of Zeus. There's a guy whose name starts with an A who is the epistates of Dionysus, a tutor who stands and teaches from the front. Okay, but right now some of you are saying, but the word for teacher that we normally hear is didaskalos. Correct, that's right. Didaskalos is the much more common term that's used, but Luke, a Gentile, in his writing, he uses this word epistata 6 times referring to Jesus, and no one else, none of the other New Testament writers use this term to refer to Jesus. So his view of a teacher is different than his Jewish co-authors. Didaskalos has more to do with kind of a British master, if you think of Cambridge or Oxford, with the robes, the dons with the robes, and a group of students sit together with a master, and he questions and answers and teaches them through Socratic dialogue, much like whom? Like Jesus or a Jewish rabbi. Rabbis teach from a seated position, and they teach in clusters, groups. The synagogue is formed of 10 men. That's how you form the synagogue. And they learn from the seated rabbi, who's functioning like a what? A didaskalos, not an epistates. But Luke says epistates. He has John say epistata, master. Then we carry on and see what he says next. He told, we saw a guy who was casting out demons in your name. That's very straightforward, so we're not going to look at it in Koine. Then we get to this next part, which is fascinating. Kai ekoluomen auton. Kai and ekoluomen, we were trying to hinder or prevent him. We were trying to stop auton him. Ekoluomen comes from koluo, which is I prevent or I hinder. And here, ekoluomen is in the imperfect tense. It's imperfect active indicative, third person plural, first person plural. We were hindering him. We were preventing him. This is fascinating because this is called a conative imperfect. The imperfect tense is action in the past, but it was a continual action that occurred in the past. A conative imperfect is an imperfect that expresses a desire or an attempt to do something unsuccessfully. Okay? How do we know it was unsuccessful? Because if it had been successful, it wouldn't be in the imperfect tense, it would be in the aorist tense, which would be, Master, we saw a man casting out demons in your name, and we stopped him. We prevented him. Or it could be in the perfect tense, which would mean, Master, we saw a man casting out demons in your name, and we were stopping him, and we did stop him, and he is still stopped. He's not doing it anymore. But because it's in the imperfect tense, the conative imperfect, we were hindering him, but we weren't able to get him to stop. When we left, he was still doing the thing that he was doing. Conative imperfect. Why does this matter? Because words are chosen for their meanings. And Luke, in giving us John's statement to Jesus, wants us to understand that they, because it's plural, we were hindering. They attempted to get this guy who was doing what? Casting out demons in Jesus' name. Anyone who receives one of these little ones in my name receives me. He said, wait a minute. You just talked about people doing things in your name. We saw a guy doing things in your name. He was casting out demons. And we were trying to get him to stop, but the guy just wouldn't stop. Pretty wild stuff, pretty great stuff. Let's go on to the really potent stuff. Look at what John says next, or what Luke tells us John says next. Hoti uk akoluthe meth hemon. Why did they try to stop him? Hoti, because uk akoluthe, he follows not, he doesn't follow meth hemon, with us. We tried to stop him because this guy is unauthorized to act in your name. He doesn't follow you with us, but notice Luke doesn't have follow you. He just says, he has John saying, he doesn't follow with us. This is unique. This is the only occurrence of the verb akalutheo, akaluthe here in this case, that is absolute. Remember, grammatically, the word absolute means something stands alone. Normally, we would expect akalutheo to have a direct object or at least an indirect object. But here, there's no written object. Master, we saw a guy casting out demons in your name, and we were trying to stop him unsuccessfully. Why? Because he follows not with us, meth hemon, with us. We're followers of you, handpicked by you, empowered by you to act. But we saw this guy who's not handpicked by you, who doesn't follow you with us. He's not a part of the authorized group, and he was out there doing things in your name. So we acted, we tried to get him to stop, but alas, we were unsuccessful. Pretty wild stuff, isn't it? Pretty magnificent. So because he doesn't follow, we hindered him. We were hindering him. We tried to stop him, because if he were one of us, he would have been handpicked by you. Or let's make it more petty, from a bunch of guys who a few moments ago were arguing over who's greatest, we don't even know this joker, and he's out here casting out demons in your name. So we tried to put a stop to that. Let us move on to what Jesus said in response. Here's Luke 9:50 as a refresher from the ESV. But Jesus said to him, do not stop him, for the one who is not against you is for you. Let's look at do not stop him. Me koluete, and the him is implied. Me koluete. Me, no, negation, stop. Koluete is the present active imperative, second person plural. It's present tense imperative, so it's continual. Stop hindering him. Stop trying to stop him. Stop preventing him from doing the thing that he's doing. Don't keep trying to stop him. Pretty magnificent. One might expect an aorist imperative, but we don't get an aorist imperative. We get that present imperative. Why? Because they were continually trying to stop him unsuccessfully. And Jesus says, stop continually trying to stop him. There's no need for it. And then he gives us the rest. Hosgar uk estin kathemon. So hos, the one, or he who, gar, for, uk estin is not, and then we get this great one, kath humon, against you, plural. Remember, John said the problem with this guy is he doesn't follow with hemon, us. He doesn't follow with us, plural. And Jesus comes back and says, anyone who's not against you, plural, huper humon estin, is for you, plural. So take careful note of that. John's concern was the guy's not a part of the team, so he used a plural pronoun, and Jesus responds and says, in using plural pronouns, Jesus used John's pronouns. Don't write me hate mail, that's a joke. He used the same number of pronouns, plural pronouns. The guy that you were concerned isn't a part of you, isn't a part of the group. If he's not working against you, he's working for you. And the best part is huper, for you. When huper appears with the genitive, it means on behalf of or in favor of. In other words, A guy that you don't know who's acting in my name, even though he's not a part of what you perceive as the team, if he's doing good things, if he's not operating overtly against our group, your group, that means he's operating on your behalf. He's operating in your favor. He's furthering the group's agenda. Pretty magnificent stuff, isn't it? Just that one little word, huper. He's acting on your behalf as long as he's not acting against you. Well, what if he were, what if John had come and said, Master, we found a guy, he was beheading nuns in your name. Well, clearly, that's inconsistent with acting in Jesus' name, and clearly that's not furthering the agenda of the group of people who follow Jesus, so that wouldn't apply, right? But casting out demons in his name, casting out demons is something that Jesus empowered the handpicked disciple group to do. It's the same agenda. It's not the same. If he were doing something disgusting, violent, vile, evil, clearly we'd be in a different context. But John told Jesus, according to Luke, what the outsider was doing. He was casting out demons in his name. So why are we stressing this? What's the importance here? Every little bit of this verse, of these two verses, included clues that were lexical based on the word choice, that were grammatical based on the construction. What was it? An adverbial participle of attendant circumstance that tells us indisputably this chunk is connected to what came before because John is answering something. We look at the choice for the imperfect verb about trying to stop the guy unsuccessfully. He was against, it was an absolute that he does not follow. John doesn't need to tell Jesus about the following other than he doesn't follow. He's not a part of our group. He doesn't follow what? With us. The language, the structure, the word choice, the construction, the vocabulary, it's all clues. That is not a mystery, but it unpacks in fullness what the message was here. The one who's not working against the group that you identify with, John, is actually working in support of the group you identify with, John. So you don't have to defend people acting in my name just because they're not a part of your group. If they're acting in good faith in my name, doing things that are consistent with what you know me to be about, there's no need for you to try to stop them. In fact, stop trying to stop them. That's what Jesus told John, right? Spectacular stuff. If this was good for you, I hope you'll continue on your exegetical journey of looking for clues and deciphering and ripping words apart. Why would he choose epistata versus didaskalos, didaskale in the vocative? It's important to check. Why is it only Luke who uses epistata versus didaskale? Could it be because he's a Gentile and the other writers aren't? Worth taking a look into. All this stuff is the answer to the mystery of the clues of why someone wrote the way they wrote nearly 2,000 years ago. Hope this was good for you. If it was, you know what to do with the social media stuff and the YouTube-y stuff. And until next time, Karis Kairene Humi, grace and peace to you.